Welcome to today's design session. My name is Alicia and I will show you how to build a responsive card like this using components and auto layout in Figma. In the description you can find a file that I'm working in so you can follow along. Let's get started. First, let's take a look at what we're going to build today. It is a card, a very well-known UI pattern, and specifically this one is created for a task management app. It lists a task name and some important details about the task. You can see that the card is divided into two parts. We have a picture that is full width of the card, and then a container with specific information about the task. And this container has its own padding so that if we remove the picture, the card still looks good. Let's undo it. The bottom container uses auto layout, and within this big container we also have two smaller containers, separate for the title and the pills, and the second one for the deadline and the avatar. Let's start our journey with creating this container with the title and the pills, and to do it we need to prep two elements. The first one would be this button here that could be unchecked or checked. This button is for checking task as done, and the pill component where we can change the colors. To start working on our design, let's bring back the panels with command period, and I propose that we change the background of our Figma file so it's easier for us to work on those elements. I think that E0 would be fine, just to have this light gray color in the background. I would like to draw a frame for our components and styles, so let's take a frame tool and draw a frame, let's say 1000 by 1000. And let's rename it by double-clicking and say components and styles. Let's start with the mark as done button. We have two states, then unchecked and checked, and we need this check icon here to create this button. So of course we will not be drawing the check manually, we need an icon set to do it. Let's go to Phosphor Icons in our browser. This is a free library that you can use for your projects. And then we need to scroll down and search for a check mark. We have a check, then copy as SVG, come back to Figma, and we need to paste it here. We've pasted this default black icon. We need to change the color to the color that we're using in our card. So to do it, we need to go to selection colors with our icon selected and select the eyedropper tool. And then we can sample the color from our text or from our icon because this is the same color. Now let's come back to the icon. Let's change the size of it to 16 pixels. So it will be our target size. And let's frame the selection. Now we can change the size of the frame and make it a circle. Let's lock the proportions and go with 24 pixels height and width. And let's go with border radius of 100, let's say, so it will be totally round. To see it better, we need a fill. And let's also select the same color that we did for the icon, just 10% opacity. Let's try to save both of those colors to be able to reuse them later in the project because those will be repeating colors. So we go to selection colors, and here under this style menu, we can create a new style with a plus, and let's say that it will be an icon color. And we can create a variable. And here we have the color with 10% opacity, and I always prefer not to use the colors with opacity so that if there is anything in the background or any different background color, it doesn't affect the target color. So always when doing this kind of thing that we did right now, we can resample the color like this, and it becomes its own color with 100% opacity, and it will not be changing depending on the background or elements below it. Let's also save it as the background secondary and create variable. And all those variables that we've just created are available in local variables. You can see the name, so there's icon and background group secondary. Let's come back to our button. Now we need to center our icon inside of our frame. And let's add stroke to our button. We need to select it, go with the stroke, and sample the color again. And again, we need to create a style for it. Let's say it will be our border/button. And create variable. If you've been enjoying this video so far, you can subscribe to my channel. Every week I publish new videos about building your portfolio using Figma and getting hired as a UX designer. And this is the checked version of our button. Let's create the unchecked version. So let's hold Option and Shift and let's drag it up to create a copy. Let's remove the check mark and let's remove the background. Now we have two versions of this button, and let's create a component where we can switch between checked and unchecked. And in Figma, of course, you can create components with different variants when you have multiple variants, but there is a special feature that Figma offers for this particular use case. So to make it happen, we need to rename our buttons first in a really particular way. Let's go with button, and this one will be false. Let's copy that, and this one will be button true. So there will be a property that will be called checked, And then we have the false value and the true value for our checked button. Now let's select both of the buttons, go to the component menu and create component set. And it will create a component, a button component with two options, two variants, which is true and false. And now let's rename the property to checked. Now we can go to our assets panel and drag the button component into the canvas. In the layers panel, you can see that this is an instance of the component because of this empty diamond shape that is next to the label. And in the design panel, you can see that there is a checked property that we can turn on and off. And that aligns with our true and false in the naming convention that we used for creating the button. And this type of switch is used for components where you have two options to choose from. So for example, checked when it comes to the button, or you can have selected or deselected radio button, checkboxes, etc. I can delete the instance here, and let's now focus on the pills. To create a pill, we need to start with a text. So let's take a text tool and let's go with pill label, just to make it universal. And right now we have Satoshi, bold, and 12, and those are the perfect dimensions for our text. So let's save our text style to our text styles list by clicking this plus button, create style, and let's go with pill and create style. And we need to also change the color. So we cannot go with just simple black. We need to use our primary color that we also used for icons. So we can repeat it, we can sample it, and also create new style. So go to styles menu, click plus, new variable, go with text, primary, and create variable. And right now let's frame selection and apply auto layout. And let's change horizontal padding to 6 and vertical padding to 2. I also would like to apply fill so that we can see it better. Let's open our menu and sample the purple or the pink color that we had in our pills initially. And the last thing to do is to change the corner radius. Let's go with like an extra high number like 100 so that we have a fully rounded pill. On second thought, I think we can add a little bit more horizontal padding. So let's change from 6 to 8 to give it a little bit more of a room. And right now, let's create different color variants for the same pill. So I will drag it, let's say, 4 times, holding Shift and Alt so that I can create the copies. And let's sample the colors from the labels that I've already prepared previously. We have an orange. We can select the pill, click I for the eyedropper tool, and just sample the color from here, and another one here as well. And just to make sure that we are good with contrast, so that there's enough contrast between the background and the text, we can use the contrast plugin. So let's go to this menu, go to plugins and search for contrast. I have it in recents, but you can use the search bar if you don't have it here. It is a very good plugin because it checks the contrast for accessibility for you. So we need to select our text, and as you can see, it picks up the color of the text and the background automatically, and it checks the color contrast ratio. And we're looking for the normal text, so less than 24 pixels because we have 12, and preferably AAA, but AA is also fine. So let's take a look at the orange one, the blue one, and the yellow one, and everything meets the contrast standards. So we can close the plugin now. Now let's select all of the pills. Let's maybe space them out vertically and space them out maybe 20 pixels or 10 pixels apart. Move them a little bit higher just to keep everything clean. And now we need to do the same thing that we did for the button regarding naming, just for the pills. So let's go with pill pink, copy the pill slash, and select the orange one, go with orange. Same thing for blue and yellow. And right now, let's select all of them, go to our component menu and create component set. We have the pill component with different variants, and also let's change to color. And now we're ready to put all of those things together. Let's start with zooming out just to have a little bit more space. And let's go to our assets panel and go with the button. Let's drag it to our canvas. And now let's add text. It will be a task name. And we need to make it 16 pixels. We keep it Satoshi bold and also 24 pixels line height. And let's apply our text color, text primary. Let's select both of those elements. Click auto layout. So right now in the layers panel, it automatically created a frame for us, and it already has the auto layout apply. And let's go with 8 pixels padding, and it automatically selected horizontal layout for us. Right now, let's go to our assets panel, bring the pill. Let's change the name to web. We need to double click and double click again just to go to our text. Go with web, select it, press Option and Shift and drag so that we can copy the pill. Let's change the color to, let's say, blue, and let's change the label to research. And let's do it again. Change the color to yellow, and let's go with mobile. And now let's select all of the pills. We need to, again, frame selection and apply auto layout to the whole selection of 3 pills. So we have a nested auto layout here. Each of the components has its own auto layout applied, and how they are spaced out within a frame of 3 of them right now, it will be also defined by a separate auto layout setting. And automatically it selected the horizontal auto layout. Let's change the space to 6. There's one more thing that I would like to do here for this row of pills. So let's imagine that we have, let's say, 2 more pills like this. And right now they will be probably outside of our card in many cases. So to prevent this behavior, we can apply the wrapping setting in our auto layout. So if we were to shrink the frame where our pills are, they would automatically drop to another row. And we can also control the spacing between the rows here as well. So it could be 6, it could be something like 12 if we want more spacing, but I think 6 works really well, and we will have that already prepared for the next phase. We can remove those 2 pills, the outstanding pills for now, but we will already have this setting applied, and if we were to, for example, shrink it a little bit more, we can still see the difference. And the last thing to do for this row is to select both of those frames. Again, frame selection, add auto layout so that we can space them out vertically here. And right now the value is 10, we would go with 8. And for our task name, we need to go with fill container so that if we were to add a longer task name, the container will stretch. And the same thing for our text field. So right now, if we were to say task name, it would still be inside of our frame. And we need to do the same thing for our pills so that if we change the width of this container here, the width of the containers inside of them also changes. Now let's focus on the second row, the row with the deadline and the avatars. And let's start with the deadline. We need to go to phosphor icons again, look for calendar, select this one, copy SVG, and go to Figma. Change the color to icon color and change the size to 20 pixels. Let's move it closer here. Let's take the text tool, so we can either click here or press T on our keyboard. Click here and go with December 24th. And now we have our 12 pixel font applied. I think we need to go with 14. And let's apply our text color, text primary. Select both of those elements, apply auto layout and space them out, let's say 6 pixels apart. And now let's focus on our group of avatars. Let's take the ellipse tool and draw an ellipse that is 24 times 24. So we need to press Shift as we're drawing our ellipse to lock the proportions and go with 24 pixels. If you didn't do it well, you can also change the width and height here. And we will need 4 avatars for this group. So let's drag and copy by holding Shift and Alt with our ellipses. And for each ellipsis, we need a separate avatar. Let's go to our plugins. And now let's use the plugin called Content Reel. It is a super useful plugin if you need some example text or image and some icons. I usually use it for images. And you have a lot of avatars to choose from. So let's say with this first one, we will choose this avatar. Select the second ellipse and let's go with this one. Select the third ellipse, maybe this avatar here, and the fourth, this avatar here. And now we can close it. Let's select all of them, apply auto layout. It will create the frame automatically. And to make the avatars overlap, we need to apply negative auto layout. So let's say -8 pixels. We can, of course, adjust this, let's say to go with -6 to spread them out a little bit, but in general, this is the idea. But the only problem here is that they are overlapping and we can't really see the separation here. So for each of the avatars, to separate them slightly, let's select all of them and let's add stroke that is inside of our avatar and is the same as our background color, so white. And right now, if we deselect, you can see that there's a better separation between those avatars. It matters especially in those smaller sizes, so that when we have different pictures, they are just easier to read through. And now when we're looking at those avatars, maybe we can even go back to -8 because they are a little bit more separated with those lines. And there's one more thing that I would like to add to our avatars, the number in the circle as the last avatar. So for example, if we were to have 7 people assigned to this task and we can only display, let's say 5 avatars, the last one would be the number and 4 people would be displayed. So we need to start with typing the text like +4 using type tool. And as you can see here, we have 12. I think better would be just 10 pixels and bold. And also let's apply our text color. Let's frame selection, apply auto layout. And right now, let's have our fixed width and fixed height. And let's set it up to 24 pixels so that we have the same size as the avatar. And let's round corners to 100%. Let's add our fill. let's say our secondary fill, so that there's a little bit of a difference, and stroke to differentiate it better. Stroke will be also inside of our circle, just as we did for our avatars, but it will not be white, it will just be the border color for the button. And make sure that the text is aligned to the center. Now let's move the circle to the group of avatars. Let's cut it, Command X, select the group, and Command V, paste it, and it will be just pasted as the last avatar in the group. Now we can select both of those elements, so the deadline and the group of avatars, Command Option G to create a frame. In the layers panel, you can see our frame, and let's apply auto layout to it as well, and it will be the auto layout. It means that elements will be spaced evenly within the frame. So in this particular case, we will have one element on the left or one element on the right, and if we were to change the size of this frame, the elements will always stay on the edges. If we were, for example, to copy paste this element, it will have 3 elements. They would also be spaced equally within a frame. Let's remove this element and change the size of this frame to something more reasonable. The next thing that we need to do is to select both of those frames and put them in yet another frame and apply auto layout. We want to space them 16 pixels apart vertically. And we need to change the settings of the containers that are within it so that it's not fixed, it's fill container, and another one also fill container. So that if we were to resize the main frame, all of the frames within it will also resize accordingly. Now let's prep the picture for our card. Let's draw a rectangle. The width doesn't matter right now because it will be adjusted to our card, but the height, I would like it to be always 120 pixels. So let's move it a little bit to the top. Now let's select the rectangle, choose our Unsplash plugin, and it's a really good plugin if you want to use some images in your project just to fill the content. And I like to use those presets, like for example abstract or minimal or architecture. You have different presets here. You can go with abstract. I think this abstract looks good. Right now let's close the plugin and let's frame both of those elements together. So let's create our final frame for the card. Let's add auto layout to our card. So let's click auto layout and let's go top left, and let's reduce spacing to 0 so that we have a good starting point. Let's add stroke to our card so we can see it a little bit better. Let's say it will be this light gray color, and you can see here that there is basically no padding around the elements, but we don't want to add padding on the level of the card because it would be adding padding also between the edge of the card and our picture, which is not what we want to do. We want to add padding for only this container here. So we need to change the setting to fill container, so it fills whichever size the card is, and we need to do the same thing for the picture. So right now, if we were to resize the card, the picture and the container below it will resize. And for the container below it, we need to add left and right 16 padding and top and bottom 16 as well. And now it's nicely done and we have some spacing around the card. The default width of our card can be 280, but we need to be able to resize the card with certain constraints. We need to set up the minimum and maximum width for our card. And to do it, we need to go to the width input at minimum, so for example 240, and at maximum width, let's say 420. And right now, if we try to resize the card, it will just stop at 420 and it will stop at 240. Let's come back to 280, just a regular setup. There are two more things that we need to add to our card. We need to round the corners 5 pixels. And you can see that the image is still not rounded here. It's because we need to clip content so that everything that is outside of the frame of our card will be clipped. And right now it looks good. And we also need to add a little bit of a shadow to our card. And to do it, let's first apply fill to our card. So we have just a white background. And then let's go to effects and drop shadow. Let's click this icon to adjust the properties of our shadow. And in general here in the color, we have just a pure black. And I think that those gray shadows based on black are not the best idea. I think that they're a little muddying the design usually. I prefer to use the colorful shadows. So for example, based on the text color that we have. And of course, we need to lower the opacity, let's say to 16 pixels. Let's see how it looks like. And blur to 8. And then y-axis to 0. Let's leave it as it is, and right now there is only one element missing, the contextual menu that I would like to place here in the top right corner. So what we need to do is go to our phosphor icons, go to search menu, select the dots 3 vertical, and click on SVG. Paste it to our Figma file just next to our card so that we can work on it. Change selection color to our icon color, change the size to 20 pixels, and frame it so that we can create a circular background behind our icon. I would like this frame to be 24 pixels height and width, and I would like to round the corners to 100%, so it's a circle. Align this icon vertically and horizontally. And right now, let's cut this icon and try to place it inside of our card. So click on the card and Command V to place it. And as you can see, it's just following our auto layout rules. So it's placed at as the last element at the very bottom. Let's move it to the very top. But unfortunately, we can't place it on top of our image. It just goes below or above it. And to achieve what we want, we need absolute positioning. So absolute positioning takes out the icon or the element from the regular flow of auto layout so that we can position it however we want, basically, but it still stays within the frame of our card. So how to apply it in Figma is we need to select this element. Let's take a look at the layers. So we have our card and we have our icon here. And it's really important that the icon is inside of our card. And now let's go to absolute position. Let's click this icon. And as you can see, we can now move it around really freely. Let's add fill to our icon so that we can see it better. And also we can see the round corners that we've applied. And by default, it is white. Let's lower the opacity to 70 so it's not that harsh, but we can still see and have good contrast with an icon. And let's align it to the right and to the top of our card using those align icons. And right now, let's move it 8 pixels away from each border. Let's hold Shift and press arrow left to move it 10 pixels to the left, and then press arrow right 2 times. And right now we have 8 pixels distance between the edge and the icon. To measure the distance, we need to hold Alt and hover over another element. So we need to select an element, hold Alt, and then hover over another element to which we need to measure. Let's do the same thing for the top border. Let's hold Shift, click arrow down, and arrow up twice so that we have 10 minus 2, so 8. And we are ready with our menu. The last thing to do here is that I would like this menu to appear only on hover. So if someone is just seeing the card, there will be no menu, but when they hover over a card, the menu will appear. And to do it, we need to go with prototyping and we need to create a component for the card. And to do it, we need to copy the card so that we have the default state without the icon. So let's remove the icon and the hover state with the icon. And let's name it card default and card hover. And in addition to the icon, we can also change the shadow slightly. So it looks like the card is floating higher above the surface. So the shadow will be slightly bigger and maybe a little bit lighter. We'll see. So we need to change the blur, let's say to 12, and the shadow will be more spread out. Now let's create a card component with those 2 variants so that every time we use the card, we can apply the interaction. Let's go with the component menu and create component set and change property to state. And right now we have 2 states for the card. And so that every time that we hover over a card in a mockup and we don't have to apply this interaction for every single mockup that we're preparing, it needs to be built into the card component. So let's go with prototyping and either use interactions or use this plus icon here and drag to our hover state and select while hovering. We'll not need to change anything else in this menu. Let's close the menu, and now every time we use this card component on hover, the menu will appear and it will change to the hover state. So let's put together a little demonstration for that to see how it works. Let's go to Assets, let's drag our card just outside of this frame entirely, and let's duplicate it, let's say 2 more times. Let's select all of the cards, go to Design tab, Command Shift G for frame, and apply auto layout just to clean them up slightly. Let's add fill to our cards and a little bit of padding on every side, let's say 50 pixels like this, so that we can see the shadows and everything. Let's select the frame, let's move it slightly, and let's play the prototype. And right now you can see that every time we hover over a card, the menu appears and the shadow changes slightly. Same thing for this card and same thing for this card. And if this card wasn't a component, you would need to apply this interaction to every single element, which wouldn't make sense in like a larger mockup. But because we've built in this interaction of hovering into our card component, you can just do it like this and it will be present in every single time you use card instance. And we're ready with our card component. Please don't throw away this file because we will be using this component when building the Kanban board in the upcoming video. So it will be really helpful for you. Thank you for joining me today for this tutorial. Here I've selected some other videos that you might like. Also, let me know in the comments how your card turned out. You can like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you soon.